Hey guys, it's Brian at Simon Designs again, and today we're going to be working on this 2002 Honda Shadow 600. Now a lot of you are probably wondering, why are you working on this Honda Shadow 600 when you got all these really other cool bikes over here? Well, here's why. I got reached out to by a friend of a friend, somebody who had this motorcycle that found my name, found my number, and called me and said, hey, I heard you're the guy to work on these kind of motorcycles. I said, yeah, that's fine, let me know what's going on with it and we'll kind of figure it out. So he said he's having a carburetor problem. The bike will crank up and idle all day long, but when he goes to give it throttle, it kind of chokes out and dies. Typical symptoms of something going on inside the carburetor. Now, I've cleaned and rebuilt hundreds of Japanese motorcycle carburetors over the years, so this is just kind of second nature to me. But this is why I decided to make a video about this bike. This customer said that he actually took this to 2 major name brand dealerships around the area, and neither of them wanted to touch it. He also said he took it to another well-known motorcycle shops around the area, and they said, nope, we're not going to touch it. And I said, well, why not? And they said, well, because we don't work on these kind of motorcycles. They're too old, and we don't have anybody that knows how to work on them. Carburetors aren't like a thing of the past. I mean, yeah, it's getting phased out, but there's still new small engines that are still being manufactured with carburetors. So this is kind of a trade, for small engines that people still need to be involved with. People still need to know how to work on these kind of machines, because there's still a lot of them on the road, and this is a Honda. It'll run forever as long as you keep the oil changed and keep the maintenance up on it. It'll be a good bike for many years to come. So this is a 2002 Honda Shadow 600. I mean, nothing special. This is just kind of an entry-level bike. I think these things sold brand new for like, I don't know, $7,000, $8,000, something like that back in the day. It's just a V-twin single carburetor. I think it's single carburetor. It might be dual, but I believe it's just a single carburetor, 600cc. Motorcycle V-twin, nothing special. It's not going to, win any car shows and win any motorcycle shows at this point, but it will definitely get you down the road for plenty of years down the road. Just a standard spoke wheel in the front, spoke wheel in the back, drum brakes, nothing fancy. It's really set up exactly the way as that CB750 was set up, my old Honda Rebel with a 2-stroke engine, drum brakes, single disc front. I mean, it's all pretty much the same bike. Small little peanut pipes that really don't make a whole bunch of sound going down the road. But, again, it's a solid bike to get you from point A to point B. And it's currently June 15th on 2022. And you know what the gas prices are right now. I think the national average is like $5.80 a gallon or something like that, or $4.80 a gallon for regular unleaded. So that's another reason why this guy really wants to get this bike back on the road. And this is one of the guys, if you have a motorcycle like this, you probably don't have a whole lot of expendable income. So I'm gonna see what it takes to get this thing running, and we might just surprise this fella and just give it to him for free. Hey guys, Future Brian here, and as you can see, that bike is long gone. But just so you know, this video costs $0 in parts to get this bike running again. Besides some brake cleaner and some tools that I already have, even if you don't have any brake cleaner, you're into this job for $3 or so. So just keep that in mind as you watch the rest of this video. All right, so it looks like he's already got the air cleaner off here, so we're just gonna take a few more bolts off, and we're gonna have to pull the tank to where we can get this inner air intake shroud unbolted from the carburetor. So that means taking the seat off, taking the tank off, and let's see if we can take this intake tube off as well. All right, we're gonna start by pulling the seat off here. This just comes right off, weirdly enough. I think it's supposed to be bolted down. I'm gonna look into that when I'm putting it back on, but yeah, this thing just kind of came right out. And next we gotta take the gas tank off. I believe there's actually supposed to be a bolt right here, but that's missing as well. We're gonna put a bolt back in there when we put it back together. And there's another bolt for the tank down here at the bottom. It's just a 12mm, and that comes off with this little grommet as well. And then next we're just gonna take this little cover right here underneath the tank off. It's just a Phillips head screw, and that'll give us access to the fuel lines right here, which we'll also take off as well. All right, so I'm sitting here draining this fuel out, and it is straight just varnish smell. If you don't know what bad gas smells like, it kind of smells like varnish. So we're gonna go ahead and drain this tank all the way out too, get some fresh fuel in here. I'm assuming that once we pull these carburetor bowls off, we're gonna see some jelly, but we'll get to that here in just a second. Also, if you guys have a carbureted bike, it's a really good idea to run the ethanol free or boat gas, or some people call it boat gas, some people call it ethanol free gas, but the ethanol is what breaks down in the gas. In fuel injected cars, it's not a big deal, but after a while, especially in these motorcycles that only get ridden a few months out of the year, the ethanol tends to break down and will gum up the carburetors, and I really have a good feeling that's what we're gonna find here in a few minutes. We're getting down to the bottom of the tank. I don't know if y'all can see that, but every little spurt, there's like a little red, it's like a red tone. It just did it really bad a second ago. But that red tone that you see is broken down ethanol. It's like a jelly almost. So I'm really glad we're doing this. We're gonna hopefully get all this stuff drained out. Look how nasty this gas is that was in here. This was a clear fuel. It's supposed to be clear fuel coming out of there, and this was like a milky brown. I used a little suction thing to get the rest of the fuel out of the tank. Also, I'm gonna give you guys a little tip on what to do after you guys don't plan on riding for a while with a carbureted bike. I'll show you that here in a little bit. And one other thing too, this petcock right here is supposed to hang directly out of the side right here. To get it out of the bike, I actually had to turn it a little bit, loosen it up to be able to make way from the frame, because the petcock kind of goes right here where the frame sits. So I had to turn that petcock a little bit to be able to lift the tank all the way out. Just a helpful tip for y'all if y'all want to remove your tank as well. So now that we got this tank off, you can see kind of where we're working with here. We need to get this inner shroud for the air filter off, and it's actually connected to the carburetor right here with a Phillips head right here and another Phillips head right here. So we should be able to loosen these guys up like this and like this. You see this got a little cutout for you to fit a Phillips head down in there. So we got those loose, and this should pop. Well, that part came off. There we go, just like that. All right, let's get this carburetor off of here. We need this Phillips head right here that is on the boot, not this one, but this one. We need to pull that off. We need to get the choke cable off, which is just a 17mm nut behind here. It's just a little jam nut. You loosen that, and this thing just pops right up. So we'll loosen that all the way, and then we'll pull the cable through and up somehow. And then also we need to get this idle screw off as well, and that's just held in this little bracket. You just push it forward and it pops right out of that bracket. So that's all clear now too. Okay, once all that stuff's loose, we got to go back over here to this side, and we got to get this 10mm and this 10mm nut broken loose. These are your throttle cables. Your push and pull cables is what they call them. One is for twisting and one is for returning, so that's why they call them push pull. So we'll just get both of those loosened up and get it popped off with the little butterfly there, and we'll keep on going. Here's a helpful trick too. If you are having to deal with a similar throttle cable like this and you're not really sure which one goes back where, you can always mark it before you take it off with a little paint pen, like a little Sharpie paint pen here. So we know this one is going to go into this part of the butterfly. So easy breezy, simple enough. Takes 2 seconds and you're good to go. So if you guys were wondering where this little hose came from right here, it mounts to the back side of this intake box. It's just a breather. All right, we got one more line to take off. It's this one right here. I'm gonna use a little pair of channel locks and just get that clamp off. Maybe turn it a few times just to get it loosened up. Okay, we got everything else off and out, but looks like there's one more line right here on the bottom of the carburetor. I believe that's the drain. I'm not really sure where that's going to, but this line, and then we got one more line right here. It looks like it's going back up somewhere up to the top. I'm not really sure where that line goes either, but we got to get these two guys off, and then this carburetor is ready to come out. Okay, something I just noticed, these are actually coolant lines. These two lines on the bottom, I pulled this one off and some coolant came out, and I'm looking back and it runs back to, sure enough, a radiator. I didn't realize that this thing had a radiator at first, but yeah, so the cooling actually runs into the carburetor and gives it a little bit extra cooling in there too. So pretty neat. I didn't realize that about this bike. Normally you don't really see that on a V-twin 600. It's normally just air cooled. There you go, there's your radiator cap right back here too, so we'll make sure to top the coolant off whenever we're done with this job as well. All right, I hope you guys can see what I'm doing here, but first thing I like to do is open this little drain valve here and just see what kind of junk comes out of there. This is just a drain for the carburetor bowl. You can open this up and drain it out if you have winter storage or winterization or anything like that. There might not be anything since we kind of drained this thing. Yeah, there's not much in there, but I do notice there's a little bit of rust looking stuff on the tip of this drain plug. So I'm thinking there might be some hidden surprises in the side of this carburetor here. Alright, so all we're going to do here is just take this little bowl off right here. I don't think we'll have to mess with this accelerator pump. I think it should be good. And all we're really doing here is just cleaning this thing out. We're not going to rejet this thing. It's a factory intake, factory exhaust, so we don't really need to worry about any of the rejetting. We're just going to clean the jets out and kind of see what's going on in here. So all you need to do is just take these 4 screws on this carburetor bowl off. I don't know if you can see it, but there's just one little cotter pin right here, and we're going to pull this little cotter pin out, and this whole valve should come up with this accelerator pump here and come right off. Just be careful not to lose anything. It'll just be one little washer, and then the spring right here, and then your little cotter pin. You can reuse all that stuff. And then this little plastic sheath right there. And now we should be able to lift this thing right up and off. There we go. As you can see, just like I was expecting, that is nasty down there in that carburetor bowl. This is all ethanol that was in gasoline that's broken down over time. And you know, it's pretty typical for these things. Carbureted bikes to collect this kind of jelly. So here, let me scrape a little bit of this stuff out of here. But that's what's under there. That's what's in there. That turns into a gel. And you're talking about carburetor jets that a strand of wire, copper wire, can barely fit through. So when it's trying to suck this stuff through it, you're obviously gonna have problems. And I think that's what we're running into here today. Also, one more thing. I don't know if you guys can notice this, but right here, this is actually the hole for the main jet. And look at that, that's just nothing but jelly stuck right here inside this jet. So here's your idle jet, which explains why this thing would crank up and idle. And then here's your main jet. Well, obviously it's not gonna get very good fuel flow when there's jelly sitting there like this. So I'm just gonna take some brake cleaner and kind of clean all this stuff out. I'm also gonna take the jets out and blow through them. But you can see the fuel quality of this fuel that's in this bowl. It's just not that great. Also, there was one more washer that came out of the bottom of this accelerator pump. It actually sits right here, and the spring sits on top of that, and then another washer goes on top, so don't forget to grab that as well. All right, so we're gonna pull this idle jet out first. I don't expect anything to be too bad with this, since it was actually idling very well. So you can kind of see a little bit of jelly in there. I don't know if you can really see it on the camera. But when you look down through this thing, you should be able to see a little bit of air in between here and here. I don't know if you can really see it on the camera, but there's definitely a hole. So this is why this thing was idling fine. It was getting plenty of fuel flow through there, but we're still gonna go ahead and clean this thing out as well. All right, here's your main jet. Same thing, there should be a hole all the way through that you should be able to see through. And this one, I'm looking through it and I cannot see anything. If you hold it up to a light, I see a very, very small amount of light going through. And you guys probably can't see that on camera. I'm not sure if it's focused or not, but just believe me, there's really not much light going through the end of this jet here. So this is definitely gonna be where our problem lies. So one more thing I'm gonna do while I'm in here. Again, I'm not gonna get too deep into this thing because it does run and it just doesn't accelerate very well. I'm gonna pull this pin for this float right here. I'm gonna pull this float out and kind of see what's going on inside there. Careful you don't drop your needle. This is actually the fuel cutoff needle. If you watched the CB750 video, you know that I've been fighting with that thing for a while. This is what's supposed to stop the fuel flow whenever the carburetor gets totally filled up. And then once again, you can kind of see down in there all this jelly that's coming out of there. That's just a crusted old gasoline that's coming out of there. So anyway, I'm gonna get just some regular brake cleaner. You can use carburetor cleaner if you want to, but I'm gonna get a blowgun and blow all this stuff out, blow the jets out, and then I'm gonna get ready to put everything back in. Now normally I can get these pretty clean, these little jets here, pretty clean, using brake cleaner and compressed air. But for some reason, if you guys need to go a little bit deeper, or maybe something's clogged that you can't get out, you can get a piece of thin stranded copper wire like this and just peel it back. And this actually goes all the way through to make sure that you've got a clear passageway through your jets. This is very, very cool little trick to make sure you have no blockage in any of these ports here. So anyway, we're not gonna get into ultrasonic cleaning, but I am gonna put these jets back in. One more thing too, I'm not gonna use a new gasket. You know, this is something I'm kind of doing on the cheap. I am gonna put a little bit of grease around this old gasket for this carburetor bowl, just to reuse it and get this guy back on the road for now. Looking good. Let's get this thing put back on the bike. I think my neighbors are cooking something. It smells good out there. Also, fun fact, I just realized this thing has 4 spark plug wires. 4 spark plugs. I wonder if they did that for fuel economy. Just like the old Ford Ranger. 4-cylinder with 8 spark plugs. And if you've never changed spark plugs in a 4-cylinder Ranger, well, just hope you never have to. And if you do have to, God bless you, because you're gonna need all the help you can get. By the way, if you want any info on this orange and black Sportster over here, we got a full build video breakdown on our YouTube channel. We kind of built that thing from nothing, so check it out after you're done watching this video. And yes, this is ethanol free. But why do gas cans suck nowadays? All right, that's about a gallon or so, which is probably, I don't know, $25 this day and age. That should be enough to get this thing started, so let's see what we're looking like here. Turn the petcock on. No leaks yet, that's good. Don't forget to put your nut on the back of the choke cable. I don't smell any fuel, that's a good sign. All right, we're gonna try it with the choke off, just see what happens. I'd say that's a success there. All right, let's get this thing finished back up. All right, so helpful tip if you guys ever run into this problem, easy breezy. Just turn this petcock right here to off, like this, and idle the bike and just let it run out of fuel. That way there's no fuel stored in the carb and there's no fuel to get jellied up like it was in this one here. So just a simple tip if you guys don't plan on riding this bike for a little while, maybe more than a week or two. If you don't plan on riding it that long, you know, just it's easy enough. Just let the fuel run out at idle. But don't forget to turn it back on whenever you're done. That's gonna do it for a day, guys. I hope y'all learned something about these carburetors on this Honda Shadow 600. If you have any questions, leave them down below. I'll be happy to answer them as best I can. If you want to see any more information on any of these bikes in the background, I've got a build video on every single one of them. If you haven't followed me on Instagram yet, go ahead and follow me. It's at @the_BrianRogers, where you can get an inside scoop on what's going on before I post to YouTube. And don't forget to like this video if you found it helpful at all. Maybe share it with a friend. And if you haven't already, subscribe. If you like motorcycle content, consider subscribing. It's free to do and it really helps me out a lot. So thanks again for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next one.